We conclude the presentation with Mr. Liao Jiao from CHINABRAND, a consultancy firm, to see also again from a practical perspective what a private firm can do to help GI groups to enforce their rights. And then we move to questions. Floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Massimo. Okay, now, good morning and good afternoon. I'm really glad to have this chance to share my opinions and working experience about GI protection in China. And in my presentation, I will just focus on the enforcement of rights, and we'll talk about what GI holders can do, not only the extracted GIs, but also other GIs. I mean, the GIs outside the 100 euro GIs on the agreement can do if they find that their GIs are being infringed in China. And at the end of my speech, I will also give some useful advices according to my working experience in CHINABRAND, especially the whole procedures of enforcement of rights. And before we get into the main topic, I will also share some challenges and good news related to GI protection in China, and it will help us to understand why we need to focus on the enforcement of rights. So at first, let's have a look at the challenges. On the one side, due to the globalization and development of e-commerce platforms in China, such as Alibaba, Pinduoduo, etc., there are more and more difficulties in terms of online GI infringement monitoring. And in the case of GI infringements, there are so many bad consequences to the GI holders. If the quality of the fake product with GI is poor, the reputation of the GI as well as all products from this region will be negatively affected. But we have to also look at the good news, because as we all know, the Chinese government is now strongly against the counterfeiting. And in China, they are also improving the IP legislation and jurisdiction about GI protection in China. Now, with the new EU-China GI agreement, it can be seen that the protection of foreign GIs will be strengthened. So for now, I would like to say the GI holders should feel more confident about protecting their GIs in China. And now let us come back to the main topic, namely the enforcement of the rights. The first step of enforcing rights is to identify where and when the GIs are violated. Therefore, a monitoring program should be conducted firstly. The means of monitoring program includes, but not limited to, online monitoring or fair visiting, or sometimes also field investigations, etc. All of that aim to find infringers who are using fake GIs or using GIs illegally. And those infringements are including part of unauthorized use of GI or use of GI which violates the regulated standards of the GI protected product, or sometimes also some fake logos could mislead the consumers. And here I would also like to remind that the targets, and when we focus on the targets should also be paid to the targets who might have close relationship with the GI products. For example, your business partners or the distributors of you in China. And all of that targets should be supervised. After targets, namely the infringers, are identified, and then it's necessary to preserve evidence if we want to send a warning letter or file a lawsuit afterwards. And now I'm working on some anti-counterfeiting projects for European countries. And based on my own work experience, one of the most difficulties is to preserve the evidence. Compared to a few years ago, many targets are now very cautious, and they are not willing to allow the investigators to get into the factories. So under such situation, it's not easy to bring the notary to site to conduct the notarized sample purchase. But with the development of the technology and also the increasing of adoption of electronic evidence by the Chinese courts, there are many new ways to preserve evidence, such as it's possible to insert an informant into the factory and then use the cloud notarization, namely the blockchain notarization, to preserve evidence. This kind of notarization will preserve evidence through the cell phones, and it doesn't require the notaries to get into the factories. So it's more convenient. And also, I want to give one more example. It's about timestamp notarization. And as we all know, by traditional preserve evidence with the help of the notaries, sometimes it's difficult because we need to conduct the evidence preservation in timely manner, but we have to get appointment with a notary. So it's a little bit urgent. But now with the development of the technology, we can also use some timestamp notarization. This kind of notarization is useful for web pages or videos, such as the TikTok videos in China is very popular. And with the help of the timestamp notarization, we can preserve evidence easily. And here I would also like to say this kind of notarization can be conducted by everyone, and the cost is much lower than the usual notarization by the notaries. Once the evidence has been preserved, then we should conduct the legal measures. In addition to send warning letters, there are also some administrative measures as well as litigation ways. Administrative measures such as raids can be conducted on factories, and fines for infringers or destruction of the infringing products are also possible. In the case of GIs registered as trademarks, and here I would like to remind that measured at the customs office can also be considered. Based on my own work experience, I want to explain more about raids. In actual cases, if the product only infringes the patent right, then the Market Supervision Bureau will not so easily agree to conduct a raid. But if it involves trademark infringement, then the success rate of applying for a raid is greatly increased. So all of that are good news for the GI protection. And administrative measures can help to stop ongoing GI violations, but they cannot bring compensation. Therefore, to recover any financial loss, litigation against the targets or negotiation with them is required. Some GI holders may be afraid that litigation may cost too much money in China, but here, as we all know, the amount of the compensation of the GI trademark infringement is determined by the actual loss. So that means the cost of the litigation will also be covered under the compensation. And the compensation of the IP infringement cases in China is nowadays also increasing. This is a trend in China. After we have mentioned the legal measures, then I want to talk about the PR. As I mentioned earlier, many targets sell fake products online, and the ordinary consumers cannot easily notice the differences between the original products and fake ones. In order to reduce this kind of impact, so PR can be used, and in the PR, you can not only name the fake products or the factory's name, but also you can explain to the consumers how to identify genuine products from fake products. So PR is actually an important tool for protecting your GI. After we have an overview of the enforcement procedures, now I will give some overall strategies for protecting GI in China. Here, I just want to emphasize two aspects. The first aspect is the most important is to using all legal possibilities against manufacturers. The manufacturers and the wholesalers and the retailers are all tightly linked to each other according to my work experience, but the focus should be on the manufacturers. And second, the whole enforcement of the rights procedures is not a short-term project, so it's really necessary to take constant action against the GI counterfeiting in China. I know it may cost too much, but I would like to see, as I said, the compensation will cover that. And on the other side, for the reputation, it's better to take constant action against the GI counterfeiters in China. And so that's what I want to present to all of you. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask me or contact me after this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Liao, for this practical approach. I think, again, it's in the spirit of sharing experience and practical tools. This is very, very useful for our members. They need to implement their rights in China. So now we'll have a good half an hour for questions.